we got to know that you had 10 on 10 GPA when you were in IIT Bombay. So what is the secret behind it? Good morning, everyone, and I am Shreyash Bakare. I am first year BSMS student at IISA Pune, and I am here. I welcome Chitraang Bhaiya, and who actually doesn't need any introduction, but I'll introduce him a bit. He is 2014 IIT JEE topper, All India Rank 1, and he is IPhO Gold Medalist. Along with that, he did his BS from MIT, and he did MS and PhD from UC Berkeley. He's currently doing his PhD, and he's a theoretical physicist. And there are a hell lot of achievements he has done. So these are the quite a few, and I would like you to tell about yourself more, Chitra.
So I think you've spoken a lot about me. Uh, right now, I work in an area of physics called particle physics. I work on quantum information and quantum gravity, and my advisor is Professor Yasunori Nomura. Uh, and then maybe when you ask me more questions, we can talk about more details about research and personal life and things like that.
Cool. So I will go through what this talk is going to be about. This welcome to Gram's YouTube channel, and Gram brings you a series known as Unconventional Reflection Series, in which passionate student will discuss about how they choose their path in pure sciences, engineering, doctor, and like all kind of a fields. And today's talk especially is going to be like, its title is going to be like Bills versus Balls. So yeah, it's quite a funny, but bill in the sense that many people go with the high packages, with the bulky amount of money they are going to get, and few people are there who go against the flow and choose something like this, which is not considered to be the prime money or oriented research. And you are the example, like you got in rank 1, obviously you went to CS IIT Bombay, and then you left it for your interest in physics. And that is like, there is that slight fear in every student's life that should we do it or we should not. So what do you think, bills versus balls? Like, what do you think is better?
So before I begin, I think I should formally thank Gram and all of the organizers for hosting this session and for giving a lot of students and young sort of undergraduates the opportunity to sort of interact with me. So coming back to your question, I, in some sense, you already answered the question that I prefer the physics aspect of it, not going after the money. I like doing research. I like physics. Uh, I guess I should also acknowledge the fact that I am slightly privileged in that I don't have to think about money, every single day. It's not a struggle for me. My parents come from a sort of middle class, upper middle class background that I did not have to think about money very much. Although most places along the way, both MIT and Berkeley have funded me. So even for people who are not coming from the financially best of backgrounds, they have sufficient opportunity to make a career in research if they so wish to do, even if they don't have access to as much resources as I've been privileged to have.
So, like, many of us don't know what are the future options in physics or any pure sciences. Like, we all know that we can do academia, or we can go and work in some research lab doing some research. So, is there any other option? Like, what are the future aspects of pure sciences?
So I guess that sort of sums up the conventional career choices in these areas. It's mostly going to be either uh, some sort of academic position, or it's going to be some research lab, because if you're a PhD, you're basically working in a research position. Some people sort of throw in a random mixed thing. So if you are sort of doing public policy, you might work in like energy department, do energy policy, those kinds of things. So a lot of government jobs open up to you if you have those sort of mixed curricula education. The sort of conventional choices, a lot of times if you're a physicist or even like astrophysicist, those people handle bulky data a lot. So there are some sort of conventional career choices in the software and sort of data mining industries type things, which is also accessible to a lot of even physics PhDs and even science PhDs, I should say.
Okay. What is the overlap of computer science or programming sort of thing in PhD pursuing physics?
So I think over time, the amount of CS or amount of coding, or at least basic familiarity with code you need to have, has increased. There are very few aspects of sort of modern research that are completely devoid of CS. So my field happens to be one of those places where we are sort of mostly devoid of using computers, but I think a lot of my friends use very sophisticated pieces of code to do their everyday research, to run simulations, to sort of do data analysis, those kinds of things. So the intersection is sort of growing by the day, especially depending on your particular research area.
And we can see that more crowd going to pure science is like going to theoretical physics or theoretical pure sciences. So what basically is the difference between theoretical pure science and applied pure science, and which one is better according to you, and why is that so?
I guess there are three main options whenever you're deciding. I think when you are an early sort of graduate student, you need to decide whether you need to do, or you want to do theoretical versus sort of more applied versus experimental. So by names, something is clear. The theory is you're basically working with sort of coming up with new formalisms or new models, trying to study behavior. So I think the main avenues in physics where people do sort of theory type things are high energy physics, which is particle physics. So all these dark matter, dark energy, Higgs boson type things are in that field. The other sort of new and coming area is theoretical biophysics, which is trying to use physics to study biological systems, evolution, those kinds of things. And then there is the sort of broad umbrella of condensed matter physics, atomic, molecular, optical physics, which is sort of dealing with bigger systems, so not single particle systems, but bigger systems like Bose-Einstein condensates, or these graphene bilayer systems, or those kinds of things people are thinking about more. So that's sort of going between theory and applied. And then in pure applied, you might have more fields like, say, AMO, which is atomic, molecular, and optical physics. And then those make even stronger contact with the purely experimental side. So most of these sort of theoretical frameworks have their corresponding experimental areas as well. So there is a particle experiment, there is condensed matter experiment, there is biophysics experiment, AMO experiment, nuclear physics, those kinds of things.
uh, cool, but like most of us don't know what exactly comes under whatever condensed matter physics, particle physics, or quantum physics. So if person like me have to choose like which career option should I go for, then what is the best course that he should go follow or should do that to know what he should do?
So I think most undergraduate programs are designed to give you some amount of exposure into these things. So you are a physics undergrad right now, and you're probably taking some theory classes, some applied classes, some experimental classes, right?
Yes.
And so that's the point of an undergrad degree, is to give you that amount of breadth in the discipline that you can sort of make a more educated choice. So this is a question people will have to answer when they start applying for their PhDs. By then you've sort of worked in a bunch of labs usually, and you have sort of felt your way around. So then you have a better idea of what you want to do. So it's not one fit all here, that if I say, oh no, I love particle theory, so everyone should do particle theory. It's up to that person. Some people are better experimentalists. Some people are better sort of in applied physics, depending on, again, what kind of things you find rewarding, basically. So there's no one fit all, but usually most undergraduate programs are designed to give you that broad exposure. So if you are doing a BS or a BSc in physics, you will get exposed to all these areas, and you will not have to make the choice until you start graduate school.
So since we are talking about interest, so let me ask, what interests you in physics? Like why physics, and what in physics?
So that's a very interesting question, and I sort of flip-flopped on this question over time. So when I started preparing for IIT, when I was maybe a 16, 17-year-old boy, I was more interested in math. I loved math, basically. Used to get good marks in math, and when I went to Kota for the first time, and I talked to the physics professor, and I told him that. So he asked me like, "Which is your favorite subject?" And I sort of said math, obviously. And he was like, "Over time, I'm going to convert you to physics." So there was an open challenge thrown there. So he was a very good teacher. Amit Gupta, I should give him a sort of mention. Very, very good teacher. Very passionate about physics. Very passionate about education. And he sort of kindled my passion for physics in some sense. Uh, so then comes sort of the the crucial year. And that year, I go attend the Physics Olympiad camp. I go to the International Olympiad. I somehow get a gold medal there. And uh, then I go back to IIT and basically join a CS degree. So physics is sort of not in the picture anymore. And then I take my first sort of formal quantum mechanics class at IIT Bombay in my first year. And that class was again a very, very interesting class. And I sort of loved the things we did in that class. And sort of October, November, December, sometime around that period, I decided that I wanted to change my fields and I wanted to pursue theoretical physics. I did not want to do computer science anymore.
So by the end of your first year, you had a clear vision that what you want to do
uh,
about
by
like.
the end of my first semester. Yeah, because the transfer admissions usually happen. That the deadline is usually sort of middle of February to beginning of March. So you need to get your applications in shape before then. So I started doing that preparation. I got accepted at MIT. I went there. I did my 3 years of undergraduate there, and then sort of started doing theoretical particle physics over time, which is at this point I'm doing more math again than physics. So that's why the flip flop aspect is there, that I sort of keep flipping between the interesting physics and sort of the math, which is sort of still fascinating to me, is just solving these arcane mathematical problems in some sense.
Certainly, maths is a language of physics. So
Yeah, but I guess the problems I work with every day are more mathy than like most physicists. So I might be working on a problem which is like, oh, in 2 dimensions, how do black holes radiate or something?
hmm,
Uh,
so
but
interesting.
yeah, like there are no 2 dimensional black holes, right? So why am I doing this thing? Because the math is fascinating.
So, like, what do you think? Like, there is some kind of a theory in our mind which we are working on secretly, or like, or as a long-term goal, something like wormhole, something like time travel. So, what is that fantasy in your mind?
So again, I would sort of invoke my mathematician card, and I'm like, I just want to do the math. I like doing the math. I'm not usually thinking about the bigger scale sort of physics applications when I'm doing research. So it's usually starting out as like, oh, this physical system can be modeled as this thing, and then it's math, and then maybe like, so basically a paper in my community would be some sort of motivation, sort of a 40-page, 50-page math, and then sort of a final conclusion where you're doing the physical analysis. But it's mostly math. So that's what I find more fascinating, I guess. It's just solving or using math to solve these complex problems.
Even I was in like 11, 12, like last year, this year, this time of the year, I was appearing my JE, and even I was like, the maths is more fascinating in physics. So what according to you were your favorite subjects, like even in physics, like was it modern physics, was it electrophysics, what was it, magnetism, what was it, mechanics?
Yeah, so I guess my all-time favorite has to be electrodynamics. It's just such a beautiful theory of things, and it's so elegant in the way sort of Maxwell formulated it, and it's sort of been the correct way to think about at least things at that scale for I don't know how many 400, 500 years or something. And I still sort of teach it every once in a while. And I taught a graduate E&M course last semester, and I love teaching that course again. So I basically love E&M more than any other area, I should say.
That's great. And there is one slight question in my mind. Like you have been to Kota, you have been to IIT Bombay, you've been to MIT, you've been to UC Berkeley. So you are well versed with all the education systems. So which according to you was the best?
Uh, so I guess there were very different goals at the different stages. So for quota, the basic thing is, all the weight of that quota thingy is to get you into IIT with a good rank. So it's very goal oriented. IIT was an interesting place, I would say. Although most people I interacted with were either very tired after their JEE preparation, or they were sort of looking at more industrial jobs, getting a plus job, going after the bills, as you sort of said, and or startup. Actually, startup was getting bigger then. So the more passionate ones were more about startups. Like after I graduated, I want to do a startup, and I was not like that. I just wanted to do research. And I think the American system, especially the way academia works here, is most people who go into college are more motivated, especially in pure sciences, to make careers in academia. So there's a setup change in the fact that IIT, most people are trying to make more contacts and try to find better jobs and startup ideas and things like that. Versus at MIT, you're basically talking to people who are sort of big names in their field and thinking about research for the most part. So there is that environment change which happens as you sort of move to the US for academia.
So yeah, I have like three questions in whatever you said right now. So first question was like my family has been like doctors family, and like most of them are businessmen doing their own kind of a work, and I chose research as my career option. So did you. So there is some kind of a business in my DNA. So what according to you can be the best course? Like if you don't want to work under someone, how can you start your own research lab, or how can you start, like what are the future options for you to do your own startup kind of a thing in pure science?
Okay, that's a very interesting question. Uh, I don't know about like why people think academia is very binding, because it's not. Like once you are a tenured professor, you're basically your own boss, right? So
Okay.
at the age of 40, you are your own boss. The only person you're answerable to is basically the person who funds you, which is a big government agency in most cases. And so it has a lot more autonomy than even a traditional career in, say, industry. If you are doing a software internship or a coding job or something, then you will have bosses until age 50, 60 something, right? In academia at 40, you're basically, even as you start becoming an assistant professor, you sort of get detached from having any superiors to you. You mostly become your collaborators, right?
Okay.
So I guess in terms of personal freedom, in terms of venturing into your research area directions, academia does give you more freedom than, let's say, industry or even working at a research lab. So I think academia is a good choice that way. The big issue people tend to have with academia is the finances, and we'll talk about it, I guess, when you ask me that question. So I'll sort of defer that question to later.
Okay, and like as you said, there's a like not a burden on you, or like nobody's boss are above you. So what exactly motivates you to do your work then? Like is it the satisfaction you get once you solve some particular equation, or is it that the deadline you have to finish it till then, or like what is the motive?
I think mostly it is the satisfaction, which is why you'll figure out like a lot of famous professors, a lot of even Nobel laureates. Right now, they're working in sort of fields which are totally orthogonal to what they got their prizes in. So that happens with academia, that over time your interests change, and academia sort of has that flexibility. So I think the classic example I have is Frank Wilczek, who got a Nobel when he was very young for strong force QCD, quantum chromodynamics, and he is still a professor at MIT, and he works on color perception now in humans. So
Oh,
totally orthogonal fields, right? And that's the freedom academia gives you in some senses. At some point, you might decide, oh, this is a more interesting question now. So maybe after working for towards some particular area for a few years, you change your tracks and you do something else.
so basically, pure science gives you the freedom of choosing what you want to do, when you want to do, and how you want to do. So there are no
Right.
burdens over you. That
Right.
is
So I guess the only issue comes like if you talk about the money, okay, so somebody is funding you and they will basically question, oh, what have you done in the past 5 years? But barring that aspect, most people will let you do your kind of stuff and your kind of research.
and like I have my cousins who are of my same age. One of them is doing his computer science in IIT Bombay, and one is at NLU Delhi doing his law.
Mhm.
So like we have this chit chat kind of a fun part. So they keep on saying that you are going to do your BS for your 4 years, you're going to do MS for 3 years, then you're going to do PhD for how many, 3, 4, 6 years, and then postdoc, and like are you going to spend your life just collecting degrees and not going to do any solid things? So what do you think about it?
I mean, so basically, when you start off as a graduate student, you're writing research papers, right? And you will, in some sense, continue to do that till the end of your career. So you start doing solid work. Even in undergraduate, the first time you work on a research project and write a paper, you are doing solid work in your field. There is no more solid work in the community than like writing research papers, right? So although the designations change and you're
Exactly, but
doing,
like uh,
you're doing a PhD in whatnot, and but the nature of your work transitions very smoothly, right? From like doing a degree, it transitions. So as a upper year PhD, you're basically doing research and publishing papers, which is what you will also do as a professor. So either they don't consider even a professorial job solid work, or I don't know.
Okay.
Then I don't have any arguments, I guess.
That depends on person to person. But like what I'm saying is like many people in India don't know like how to pursue physics, or like even if they're interested in physics they're forced to go to computer science or whatnot, and they kind of lose their interest. So what is the best pathway for them to come back to the research or pure sciences? Is there any way after doing CS we can pursue physics, or after doing whatever different courses we can do physics or pure sciences?
That's an interesting question. Again, it depends on like what level of physics you want to do. Suppose you want to just do recreational physics, and that's always available to you. You know, with the internet, there's so many resources available that you can learn more about physics, and you can attend sort of public lectures and public events and keep the interest going. If I'm talking to someone who wants to start like applying for a graduate school or something like that in physics, then they will basically have to, for a few years at least, work as a researcher so that they have some publication to show on record when they apply for a PhD. So that path is more strenuous. So a lot of people, if they want, as even as undergraduates, they can go talk to their professors who are doing physics research in their universities. So most technical universities will have a physics department, I imagine, and you can take up a research job there and sort of try to get some publication and some sort of recognition in the community, even while continuing your main degree. Especially fourth years tend to be a little bit less busy, so those people can do that then, or they can apply for a master's then and then do more research. So there's always enough options after undergrad to come back to physics if you want to, or you can always keep it a sort of hobby or a passion or something. So those both of those options are available. Like no one is like you have a undergraduate degree in CS, so I won't take you for a master's program. So that's not the case.
Okay.
So yeah, you can always come back if you want to.
And like I was going through your interviews and I found that you don't usually prefer transfer programs, and you say that freshmen are for master's PhD is better than transfer. So why is it so?
I mean, that's a purely statistical fact. MIT admits about 1,000 freshmen and 17 transfers.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
so yeah, so it's purely statistical that it's much harder to get in as a transfer student than as a freshman admit, which is why I'm like you should not try to apply for transfer admissions. It's just much harder to get that admission. That's why I say that if you
That itself is a flex for you. That's
so not a flex, but like or for example, Stanford didn't even admit one person for I don't know, maybe they admit one person in a year for like very exceptional circumstances, but they don't take any transfers. So yeah.
and like we got to know that you had 10 on 10 GPA when you were in IIT Bombay. So what is the secret behind it? Because right now I am finding it very hard to even get 9.
Uh, I guess the secret is at least at IIT, a lot of people were burnt out mostly. So I sort of
Okay.
was able to. I still like studying, I guess. So I could always study and not feel bad about it. That why am I studying? So I kept doing my every sort of routine day of self study after the classes. Versus most people were exploring their personal interests, which is totally fine. If you don't like studying, you will go to IIT and do other things, and that's fine, especially as a first year. There's no objections to that. But because I like studying, I've just been able to get GPAs versus other people were not even concentrating, I guess. So I guess the secret in some sense is consistency. If you're looking for like a one word tip, is instead of studying for exams, try to study every day.
That's really nice. But like there comes a time when student feels demotivated. They don't feel like, like after this huge 2 3 or whatever foundation plus 11 12 plus JE preparation, most of them are repeaters, so they are frustrated with the studies and all of that things. So they usually tend to get diverted from the education or whatever study they are going to do. So what is your advice, or what, like even you might have feel like sometime there comes a up, sometime there comes a down, then what were your strategy to avoid this, overcome this?
Okay, so So I think the first thing you need to ask yourself is, why am I doing this? What am I doing? Sort of question. And if you don't like education in general and are doing physics sort of for the coolness of it, then it's going to be very hard to survive as a physicist. So if the answer is I like physics, then you can always sort of find toy problems to solve and things to do. So that's my sort of thing, that if I'm very frustrated or bored, then I just try to develop a new sort of problem or something, like a simple toy problem from electrodynamics or mechanics or something, and just sort of flesh it out, try to study it, try to model something interesting, or just take up a textbook, use one of those problems and adapt them or something like that. And those kinds of things are very rewarding, at least to me. And I think a lot of us are sort of interested in that. That's why we are sort of doing physics, is because we like that problem solving aspect. So it's always good to connect with that facet of you if you're feeling very demotivated. Is just sort of open up your favorite textbook and read one of those problems and try to think how can you sort of spin that problem off and make a different problem out of it.
Yeah, even I agree with you. I'm so much attached to that Ichivama concept of physics that I keep on solving problems even now. So
Right. So next stage you can try to do is, when you're frustrated, just like, oh, this is an interesting HCV problem, but because they have an upper cap on how hard they can make it. So now what you can do is, like, next time you read it, oh, this is an interesting problem. What if we change this in this way? So
yeah.
that basic curiosity about changing these simple details and sort of going forward with that is very helpful in keeping motivation high. Versus, because even as researchers, you're basically looking at other people's papers and tinkering them and getting new details out of their models. So I think that's a good skill to learn, and the earlier you start, the better it is, I guess.
So like let's dive in deep into the question answer session, and let's how financially feasible it is for a middle class student to study abroad and do his bachelor's, master's, or PhD program, and like what are the scholarships available for him, and like on what factors does the expense depend, like does it depend on the country, state, or depends on the college you're applying or the course you're applying, or like how is it distributed?
Yeah, so that's a very important question to a lot of your viewers, is how do you manage finances?
Yeah.
So there are a bunch of different things that I can sort of mention here. So the first thing is, when you start applying, a lot of colleges, especially the good ones, give something called need-based financial aid. That means that they will ask you to submit the records of your parents' financial situation, and based on that, they will give you whatever funding you need to basically pass that course successfully, or how much ever amount. So depending on your parental income, if it's high, then you get less scholarship. If it's more, then you get uh, uh, sorry, if your parental income is high, you get less scholarship, and if it's less, then you get more scholarship, basically.
Yeah.
uh, so I think MIT does it that way. A lot of colleges, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, etc., do it that way. So if people are applying and get selected to those places, they should not have a hard time figuring out their financial situations. And usually the cost of attendance includes sort of boarding, lodging, food, etc., etc. So that covers everything. You're not responsible for any extra money for staying or something. And they account for the fact that if it's a more expensive area, then things will be more expensive. So all of those things are sort of taken into account when they calculate your total financial package. So that's the situation with these colleges. A lot of other colleges might have merit-based scholarships, so that depends on how your grades are and how well you perform in examinations, SAT or something. Uh, they might give you a merit-based scholarship. So these are the two broad types of things that usually happen for undergraduates. Then also some people work for summer internships in summer, and those can also fund part of their education. So that's also an option available to a lot of people. Like that's a small offset. It's not going to offset your entire finances, but it is going to help you out. And a lot of colleges are good with giving sort of very low, like zero interest rate loans as well. So even that's an option people can explore if they want to do that. So that sort of covers up the financial situation for undergraduates. For graduate school, in most places in America, they will see graduate school as a job. So you will basically not have to pay fees. You will have to teach or do research, and those jobs will sort of come with a stipend. So they will pay you enough money to take care of your, again, housing and food situation. So that's how I sort of uh, take care of my finances now. I get a sort of stipend for research. I also got a scholarship called the Berkley Fellowship. So slightly lighter. Otherwise, people have to teach. So depending on your particular situation, you might have to teach or something. But once you start graduate school, you usually are not going to pay money, especially in a PhD program. You're not paying out of your pocket. It's all through your teaching or research that your finances are covered. So if
And
someone's financial situation is sorry to cut you. If
continue.
someone's financial situation is not the best, I would recommend that undergrad can sometimes be harder to get into, uh, especially financially. But grad school is definitely a good option, especially if they're applying to a PhD program. Then they don't have to worry about at least their personal finances, and they might even be able to save. I would say if they're living sort of stingily, up to $5,000 to $7,000 a year, which they can send home if so required.
And what, according to you, are the differences of doing pure science in India and pure science in abroad somewhere?
Right. So I guess the issue is in India, there it's not that well funded. Like a lot of professors don't have very good incomes just by virtue of how the field has sort of functioned. But outside India, most places in Europe or America or Canada, Australia even, you'll find decent funding for graduate school as well as later on. Uh, yeah, even I think in IIT or something, you will get stipends if you teach or something. As a grad student, you are not supposed to pay fees, and you do get a small stipend. It's just usually so it's not comparable with income, I guess. So you don't have to pay anything from your pocket, and you might get like a 10,000, 10, 20,000 rupees a month sort of in stipend. But yeah, that's not that much money that you can sort of do things with it. So
So basically, this whole thing is about the finance if you are doing pure science in India, and like
yeah,
how it is according to research opportunities or the professors here, and like education wise.
yeah, so there are definitely a few people doing very good research. I mean, TIFR is there. There's a lot of so TIFR is not. They probably don't have a lot of graduate school, undergraduate school, but a lot of like IISc Bangalore is there. They do good research. There are these smaller institutes. There is CMI in Chennai, which does a lot of sort of math and theoretical physics research. There is Harishchandra Institute in Allahabad, where like there is Ashok Sen. He's a very big name. A lot of these ICERs and NICERs have very famous faculty members on them. So there is definitely good research happening in pockets in India. So yeah.
And like for a student like me, what will you suggest? Like from the first year, what should we do except from our academics or whatever is being taught us in the campus?
So I think the most important thing, especially if you're looking in a career in academia, is you want to get your hands dirty with research as soon as you can. So you should, whoever is teaching you a class, go talk to that professor, tell them, read their papers or something, and tell them that you're interested in working with them. And sometimes they have openings, so they might be like, okay, sure, you can join my research group and do something. And so the first 1 or 2 years, you will basically be doing like a handyman's job at research, like helping them analyze data and doing all sorts of sort of the drudge work or drudgery in some sense. But that's also a part of this process, I guess, because they need someone to do it, and you are sort of not having enough knowledge. You will be the person doing it, but later on, as you sort of stay in the group, you, especially if once you start your own project, at some point you become the leading expert on your project, and then people ask you questions about it. So that transition happens smoothly. So I think
It's like a graduate process.
right, but getting your hands dirty and doing these sort of tinier research projects, which might initially seem a bit dumb, is not is something people should really sort of do as soon as they can.
And like while applying for like PhD or masters outside, I've seen like the recommendation letters are of very prestige.
Mhm.
So that obviously you can get from the professor you are doing work under. So like, is there anything like ये प्रोफेसर है तो उसके लिए मतलब for this particular professor it is like different kind of a prestige, and for this particular university or this particular college or this particular professor it's not that huge, big deal. So is it like that? And if it is like that, then how much does it matter?
So I guess there are a couple of things you need to think about. There are some professors who will be more famous than others, and their word carries more weight. Uh, the other thing is if somebody suppose went to US for a postdoc or has collaborators in the US at a particular place, his word might carry more weight, and he might be able to sort of tell his friends there that look at this application a little bit more leniently. So suppose you have a professor who went to Stanford for a PhD or who went to Stanford for a postdoc or something, then they might have some contacts or maybe the collaborators there. And if you work with those people, then they definitely can put you in touch. And sometimes, even as undergrad, you might be on the project with a few people, even in the US, and start building some relationship with them. And that will help your later career. So sometimes your collaborators, if you happen to find them this way, might invite you to work with them as a PhD. In that case, life sorted. But yeah, there is some differentiation in professors based on experience, collaboration, education, etc., etc. So try to, I mean, when you start, it's hard to make choices, but as you sort of grow up and are like a third year, fourth year student, you might be able to, contact a new professor and say that I want to work with you, and maybe they'll take you.
So like for me personally, the
Hmm.
issue is like I have like I'm just a 12th graduate. I'm like I don't
Hmm.
have no research knowledge as such. I don't know what is exactly done in research. So
Hmm.
how to approach professors, and how we can't just say that I'm a newbie, I don't know anything, and let me work under you. They are obviously not gonna allow that. So what kind of things that we should start building up so that we can approach them more easily?
Right. So I think so. They know, right? As your first year, they don't expect you to know quantum electrodynamics or something. They understand that. So if you go tell them I'm a first year undergraduate and I don't know very much, I think they won't be like, oh, then don't come work. Some of them might be like, if they're doing like sort of theoretical particle physics, they're like, oh, you don't have enough background. But say somebody doing radio astronomy or something where you might be able to do a data analysis job for them, might be like, hey, if you are willing to work with sort of some data and help us with this project, you're very welcome to join our group. So look for projects where your skill set can fit. Other things that help is before you go meet a professor, obviously, uh, look at their research, look at what they do, what they have been publishing in the past few years. Tell them that you've looked at their papers, you find it interesting, you feel like you can sort of do these kinds of things in their group. So I mean, don't walk up there and say like, I want to do research, I don't know anything about you. Like do your background research, and they honestly understand that as a first year a student, you don't know very much, but usually they will have at least some work that they can ask you to do for them.
Certainly. I'll just ask one question from audience. And
Mhm.
the student asks you, I want to pursue career in physics. My dream college is IISc. A lot
Mhm.
of people tell me that it is extremely risky to go into research as a profession and has caused a lot of confusion to me. So what should I do now, and how should I approach my dream?
uh okay, so that's an interesting question. I guess so. I think I'll have to talk about a few other things here. What do you mean by risky is the first question I have for people. Like, is it going to pay as much as software engineering? Maybe not, but is it going to pay more than other careers? Probably yes. So that's a relative question. What is risky versus what is not is a relative question. Uh, so that's one thing people should keep in mind. And honestly, depending on, again, on your personal needs, you don't need very much money, honestly, after a certain point to be very happy. The
Exactly.
money aspect is probably strongly capped. I don't know what the cap might be in India, but I feel like my stipend sort of pays my expenses pretty well, and I can splurge a little bit here and there. Do one or two sort of expensive things in a year. Uh, so I don't get paid as much as probably someone doing software engineering. But I don't think that extra sort of 60, $70,000 is going to make my happiness go up significantly. So again, personal finances are not going to be very bad for you. The issue comes if you start thinking about this idea of sort of settling down and stability, because that comes later compared to other careers. But that's also true of like people sort of becoming doctors or something. You won't become a doctor until like you get your MBBS and then your PG and then your MD and whatever whatnot. So stability comes late compared to people doing, let's say, traditional tech jobs. And the other issue is you might not be able to sort of send money home, and you might not be able to live a very rich lifestyle and have have the fanciest of cars or something, or the fanciest of houses. But it's not going to be like you don't know where to get food from. Usually your stipend or something will cover that for you. So
If he or she might be asking like by risky means like if you get a hint you can like if that hits your mind then maybe you can do that research, but there are times when you are doing something but you're not finding any result out of it, like it is just a waste, like I spent my whole year over this and there are no outcomes out of this. So that kind of a situation is there. So maybe he is referring to.
that happens with research, and that's a very valid problem. And there's no solution to that. That's like when you're trying to discover new knowledge, it's not going to be a 100% success rate. But usually, with time and experience, you sort of know what questions you can attack and sort of solve in a valid amount of time. So in some sense, that's what you're learning as a PhD, is learning how to uh, figure out which questions have interesting enough answers and that you can sort of work in a reasonable amount of time. But especially if you begin research, usually professors know that, and they won't give you projects which are going to be like, oh, find me a solution of quantum gravity. And obviously, you're not going to do that. So they're not going to ask you to solve that question. They're going to give you a very simple problem, which is probably solvable in 6 months, 7 months, a year. So that way, uh, when you start, you're not thinking about the questions, and later on, you have enough experience to sort of navigate your way around that risk. And sometimes you do start up research projects, and within a month or two, you realize that this is either going to be very difficult or pretty much impossible with current techniques. So some people go forward, develop new techniques, other people start new projects.
And how feasible it is to work over two things parallelly while doing pure science? Like if someone finds two fields interesting, then how feasible it is for him to do both the things like at the same time?
So again, depends on how much intersection there is, how much time you have. So it's very hard doing two things as an undergraduate because there's classes, there's so many things.
Yeah.
As a PhD, you have a lot of free time, right? Like especially upper year PhDs. So usually you are working on at least 2 to 3 projects at one time.
Okay.
Uh, Maybe in the same area, sometimes sort of slightly different areas. It is not impossible to do two very different things, like maybe doing one thing which is theoretical physics and some other thing doing like biophysics experiment at the same time. It's just that most professors will sort of demand most of your time, so you won't have enough time to spare. But it's not impossible. So, but yeah, even if you're working with one professor, usually as an upper year graduate student, you will be doing multiple
So,
projects.
so basically, you mean that while doing undergrad, you are busier, but while doing PhD, you are comparatively free.
Right. And the point is you will do multiple projects, and again it's a smoother transition. So if you talk to a professor, they will usually be working on 5 or 6 projects simultaneously. So the number of projects you're doing simultaneously again sort of goes up continuously in some sense. It's not, oh, I'm a graduate student, so I can only do two. When you start off as a MS student, you may be doing one or two, and then it may go up to two or three by the time you graduate.
And like, on what factors, sorry, on what factors does your stipend depend on? Like, does it depend on the year you are, or the number of projects you are doing, or what kind of a project you are doing, or something like that?
So again, depends on what funding is coming from. If it's coming from teaching, then sometimes it's dependent on your year. Sometimes upper year graduate students get a little bit more stipend. If it is coming from research, then depending on your group, it might be up or down. So sometimes, like usually, experimental groups, at least in the US, tend to be much better funded than theoretical groups.
Okay.
Uh, so yeah, a little bit, maybe a couple of $1,000 here and there. They might depend. A lot of universities have standardized it, so it might be the same for everyone who's sort of your year or your age in some sense, and changes maybe as you sort of grow older in academia. So, but yeah, it's not very strongly dependent on the number of projects. I would say it's more dependent on your year, what the source of funding is, and what your sort of broad research area is.
So basically, it depends on your knowledge, we can say.
Knowledge and research area, yeah, more or less.
Okay. And like, while you are doing your PhD and your postdoc, maybe you're getting a stipend, but what after that? Like, are you going to get the stipend throughout your life or throughout your research career, or you there comes some certain point after that you have to look for your own research areas and work for them and ask people to fund yourself, or what?
Right. So again, in academia, there are sort of two traditional sources of funding. Either people are funding you for teaching, which is sort of guaranteed through the university. So you might get some base salary through the university. If you're doing experimental research, that's not going to be enough money. So you need to apply for experimental grants or something. So most professors are on grants from some government department, both in India and in the US, and that's going to fund most of your research. So you're not going to be on a stipend as a professor. You're going to get a teaching salary, and you're going to get maybe a grant for research.
So it depends on like professor to professor on how
Right,
like asks for it.
right. Or again, some if you're doing like a big experiment involving very sophisticated equipment, you will need more funding than a theorist who doesn't need very much except for chalkboard and chalk.
Correct, correct.
So funding will depend on what you do, how much money you need, how well the government is funding that project at this time. So a lot of factors basically.
Those factors comes after PhD, obviously. So you need not to worry about them right now.
Yeah, those are not, I think, relevant for most of our audiences, I would say.
Correct.
Something.
Yep. So one audience asks us that in India, is there any good research option in top institutes like IISc and ISERS, and how do you like rate the colleges in India for research purposes?
I mean, ISC is pretty good. ISERS also, as I mentioned, there are good professors everywhere in India. IIT Kanpur has a BS in physics, which is very much in line with how BS degrees are run across sort of US and Europe. So 4-year bachelor's program, which is sort of rare in India usually. More and more universities, I feel like, are shifting towards that 4-year pattern now, which is more common across the globe. So Kanpur has that. I think Bombay has a engineering physics degree, and there's again chemistry, math. A lot of those things are also a lot of IITs again because they have departments for physics and math and chemistry.
Right.
So they do run their own programs in a lot of cases. So those places, CMI, as I mentioned, does a lot of good research, and then ISERS, NICERS, ISC, all of those places have definitely have good professors. So I mean, uh, you're not making a very risky decision going there compared to, let's say, a bad engineering college, I would say. Like
Okay.
at the end of the day, there is enough. If you do enough coding, you'll get a coding job, even if you don't have a CS major or something. So yeah, if you really feel that way, then just start learning coding as a second year, third year, and you'll get a job if that's what you're finally looking for.
Yeah. That thing is anyways open for you. But
Mhm.
like what is the question is like ISERs are pretty new compared to IITs, and that's why ISERs have like not so well recognition in India itself. So
Mhm.
how much it matters? Like if I'm from IIT, how much respect or how much recognition I have outside India, and if I'm in ISER, how much recognition do I have in India, like outside the India?
Okay, so I think that is again dependent on who your audience is. So I told someone that I was going to MIT, and they were like, "Acha, Pune wala."
Oh,
So
okay.
So yeah, so they did not even know that MIT exists outside of Pune, just because virtue of like that person's whatever knowledge sphere. Like they have heard of a lot of people going to MIT Pune, and they know that. So if I'm looking for recognition there, then I think it's pretty much like impossible situation.
Like
Uh,
the
most
educated
people
audience,
who
you can say. Like,
right, people who know, I know ISER, you know ISER. Most people know about ISERs. Most people know about professors there. Most people know that there are a few professors there. Again, uh, so yeah, even though the institutes are new, they won't have only professors who are below 30, right? They have more
correct.
older people who are well established or whose names are more recognized. So at some point, maybe your college is not very well known, but the professor you work with is well known, and that's good enough. And yeah, honestly, like sometimes again, just most Indian audiences would not even know of like IASC or ISERs, and that's just because there's no exposure to those things. And if you are expecting everyone to know about your college, that's maybe an unfair expectation, I guess.
Surely, surely. So
But
it,
yeah, as you said, like people of knowledge, people who know, people who are in the community know about ICERs. So that's what you care about. Those will be the people who will make decisions for you. If you tell someone on the street and maybe they don't know about ICER, they don't have an impact on your life again. So it doesn't
yeah,
matter
I
really
would
again.
like to share one incident. Like I got into ISER, I left IIT Kharagpur for ISER Pune, and then I told my neighbors that I got this much rank and I'm going to IISER Pune, and they were like थोड़ा पढ़ लेता यहाँ का local engineering college तो मिल ही जाता. So it's like very, sad reality, but like we have to accept it.
Right. And I mean, you're not going there in the small term to get recognition because you went to a good college, I guess. Like that's the point of doing science, right? Like you're not going there because you went to a good college and now people should just like applaud you for that.
Correct, correct. So, and like some sort of philosophical question maybe. So how do you handle your failures, or like whenever you feel low, how do you cheer yourself up?
So I guess especially pandemic has taught us a lot about keeping up, and I feel like having a good hobby on the side which has nothing to do with your work is very helpful. So I have always been very passionate about cooking. Even if you look up my interviews from 4 or 5 years back, I mentioned that. So I think that's my sort of second thing to keep me happy is just sort of cook something interesting, cook something new, work with a new ingredient, work with new thing. And for other people, it might be music, it might be painting, art, dance, whatever. So I have that second hobby because otherwise it's going to be hard, right? Just one thing in life is not sufficient, even in long term. So most people, I feel like, will have one hobby, like, and make sure it's more creative. It's more, it's a space where you have some expression freedom, and that is very helpful. Like, so yeah, that's how I keep myself motivated. That if I'm going through a bad research stress, my cooking improves because I'm
Okay. And
focusing more on that.
yeah, like, and even one more thing I noticed in your past interviews, you keep on saying that like stay away from social media and focus more on yourself and that sort of thing, and not spend a lot of time on social media. So how actively do you yourself follow that?
Okay, so I basically am not active on Facebook at all. I don't know how to use Instagram or Snapchat or any of those like millennial things. Uh, and what else? I'm on the regular family WhatsApp groups, which everyone is, but that's mostly like parents sharing weird messages, so
Good
that I'm
morning. Yeah.
mostly ignoring them. Uh, that's yeah, that's the end of my social media life. Maybe I watch a little bit of YouTube for like entertainment, but that's about it. I think the reason why I'm sort of more strongly advocating for that now is because if you're doing it very persistently, the way social media works is it's basically reducing your attention span, right? Like you can't focus on things for longer than 30 seconds if you're used to scrolling Instagram or scrolling Facebook or something. And that's going to negatively affect whatever career choice you make, especially if it's a career choice where you need a lot of concentration. So
Yeah.
that's my major fear here is if it is leading to attrition of your attention span, that's not a good thing.
But
So
like some sort of things are very important in this kind of things are important in life. Like I've seen, like even like my personal experience, like those people who are more into academics, or more into like so-called nerds, they tend to get away from the social life, from friends, and from that kind of a fun part others do enjoy that we mostly skip on. So how do you feel about it? Do you feel that we should also go out with friends, like, and we should
I'm
also
not
do
advocating being a loner or being
not
locked up.
not exactly what I mean, not exactly
Yeah,
what I mean.
what I'm saying is like as long like do activities with people, don't do social media. Like go on if you like music or cooking or whatever, do it with people. Like meet people through that. Go out on dinners. That's fine with me. Uh, go learn a new art form or something, or go out on a walk with a person. That's fine with me because most of those things are not going to adversely affect your attention span or your body in any shape. So yeah, do your social things. Just do it how people did it like 20 years ago.
Correct, exactly, like before the social media
Yeah,
era.
just do it that way. Like do it the old school way, I guess. Go meet people. Go do new things. Like wherever you live. Like if you're living in a city, most people will travel to a different city for their undergraduate education. And yeah, go travel that city, explore that city. Explore the weird nooks and crannies of those cities. Most Indian cities have very interesting backstories to them. So I don't know how much Pune you've explored, or maybe you're from there or not.
Yeah, I'm
But
from
yeah,
Kolhapur. It's near Pune, so I've been there a lot
but
of
yeah,
time.
go explore like the weird thing that maybe there is some like 200-year-old shop somewhere in Pune which like no one knows about, but serves like incredible sort of chaat or something.
Yeah,
So go do that, I guess. Like most Indian cities have character, so I'm not opposed to those kinds of things. I'm just opposed to like social media and like liking photos of food rather than eating food, I guess.
correct, correct. Even I'm a foodie. Even I love cooking and I love
So,
eating
so
more.
go do that. Yeah.
And yeah, like I get you, and I agree with the social media adversely affecting our life. That is something I should, focus on.
He says yes.
Cool. Okay, so like most of people have a lot of doubts in their mind, and not everybody is as privileged as me to ask you questions personally like this. So is there any way we could contact you, as you're not on like social media a lot?
Mhm. So yeah, I have sort of over years I've always gotten questions, and I feel like a lot of them tend to have similar flavors. So what I'm trying to do is like I have created a personal website which is sort of has a lot of my personal interviews and stuff like that, which people can watch, and also planning to start writing a blog there and take up audience questions. So we'll probably include a link in the description. So go text me there, and hopefully within a month or two, whenever however frequency I responded to, I'll try to answer people's questions. And let's sort of conclude this interview. Let's thank Gram, and let me thank Shreyas for conducting this so well. He was a bit tensed in the beginning. Hopefully, not so anymore. He did it very well.
You are
So
very, nice as a person and very helpful by your nature. So I was a bit nervous initially, but thank you so much for making me comfortable and answering my questions this friendly. And thank you, Gram, for giving me this opportunity to interact with this my idol. And it's very pleased. I'm very pleased to meet you. And thank you so much.
likewise, thanks, Gram, and thanks to all the audience who's listening to us for like an hour or so.
Yeah, that helped them a lot. I believe so. So yeah, maybe that is it.